One road rewrote the map of America, from Chicago's bustling streets to the Pacific's last shimmering view. Route 66 became far more than a highway number. It carried migrants, dreamers, soldiers, and tourists, a living story of change, hope, struggle, and reinvention. Every mile reshaped not just travel, but the way Americans saw their country and themselves. It began in the 1920s when America was stitching together its future in steel concrete and ambition. Cars were becoming accessible to more people, but crossing the continent by automobile was still a major ordeal. Roads between states often did not connect. Routes shifted or ended without warning. A traveler had to piece together maps, local roads, and logic. Into that landscape, the idea of a coherent through highway emerged. It would cross the country and bind states, towns, and destinies. In 1926, the United States officially designated a new route running from Chicago to Los Angeles, today ending at Santa Monica. That route was called United States Route 66. Over time, that highway evolved through reroutings, relocations, and pavement upgrades. When first signed, there were long stretches still unpaved. By 1938, paving reached the entire route. The route cut through 8 states: Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. In total, it stretched roughly 2,448 miles, although real mileage varied with realignments. Almost immediately, Route 66 began to change lives. In the 1930s, the Dust Bowl devastated the Great Plains. Crops failed and winds scoured topsoil. Families lost everything. Many looked west, hoping to find work in California. Route 66 became their path and their lifeline. Thousands packed into old cars and trucks and followed that road in search of new beginnings. In The Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck called it the Mother Road and wrote that it carried the dispossessed toward an uncertain promise. Along the way, towns offered what little they could: meals, fuel, lodging, repair. Cafes, garages, and motor courts stretched along the route to catch wayward travelers. These small businesses often depended on the flow of traffic to survive. That network of local service is one of Route 66's lasting legacies. During World War II, the highway took on additional importance. It carried troops, equipment, supplies, and staff, and played a significant role linking factories, training bases, and support installations. Meanwhile, civilian travel was limited by rationing and wartime restrictions, but the highway infrastructure held. After the war, America entered a period of growth, optimism, and mobility. Car ownership expanded. Middle-class families had more leisure time. The post-war road trip became a dream for many. Route 66 was primed for that moment. As Americans hit the road, Route 66 became a moving stage of Americana. Neon signs lit up long before digital navigation. Motels boasted quirky architecture and catchy names. Diners offered comfort food to weary drivers. Roadside attractions such as giant statues, caves, painted deserts, and curious museums invited travelers to stop, stretch, and take pictures. The journey became just as important as the destination. Popular culture magnified the myth. In 1946, a song called "Get Your Kicks" on Route 66 captured the imagination, later sung by Nat King Cole and many others. That song turned Route 66 into more than a road. It became a symbol of adventure and possibility. A television series in the 1960s followed 2 men driving across America in a Corvette exploring life and places. That show reinforced the idea that the road itself could tell stories. Through those decades, Route 66 reshaped how Americans thought of travel. Before this, highway long-distance journeys meant trains, scheduled stops, and fixed routes. Travel was a serious undertaking. After Route 66, people expected to get in their cars and go changing plans, stopping for odd sights, sleeping in motels, making spontaneous detours. The automobile was now central to how people moved, explored, and experienced their country. The road also connected cultures, regions, and traditions. Driving from Illinois through the Midwest, and then across plains and into desert Southwest, before reaching California, meant encountering many different peoples, foods, landscapes, and stories. Travelers absorbed a patchwork of American life that would otherwise stay remote. Route 66 functioned as a cultural corridor, exposing one region to another. By the 1950s and 1960s, the limitations of Route 66's original design started showing. It was mostly two lanes with curves, local traffic, slow sections, narrow shoulders, and variable pavement quality. As federal investment turned toward the Interstate Highway System, the writing was on the wall. In 1956, President Dwight Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, which initiated the modern interstate network built for speed safety and defense. New interstates began to bypass many segments of the old road. Towns that depended on passing traffic saw business decline. Motels closed, diners shut their doors, gas stations faded. Over time, entire stretches of Route 66 were decommissioned or converted into local roads. In 1985, Route 66 was officially removed from the United States highway system. Even so, the story was not over. Soon, preservation efforts began. People who remembered the road's golden days and newcomers who felt drawn to its myth started campaigns to conserve the roadside architecture, neon signs, original pavement diners, and motels. Historic Route 66 associations formed in states along the route. The National Historic Route 66 Federation was founded in 1995 to support these efforts. Today, many segments are signed as Historic Route 66 or Scenic Byway. Travelers from all over the world come not to hurry but to linger. They drive sections, photograph old neon signs, stay in restored motels, dine in vintage diners, and browse museums full of maps, postcards, and memorabilia. The road itself is a living museum. Amboy, California is a small desert town once nearly forgotten. With declining traffic after interstate bypasses, it might have faded to ghost status. But in 2005, an owner named Albert Okra purchased the town and invested in restoring Roy's gas station and the vintage neon sign. That effort has made Amboy a stop for nostalgic travelers seeking authentic Route 66 experience. Even new forms of travel find echoes of Route 66. In 2018, the United States Bicycle Route 66 was first designated in parts of Kansas and Missouri to follow segments of the original alignment for cycling tourists. Additional sections have been added in recent years. That extension shows how the Route 66 legacy adapts to changing ways people move. Because of its mythic status, there are proposals to designate Route 66 as a National Historic Trail as part of its centennial in 2026. Such recognition would honor its impact, draw funding for restoration, and strengthen tourism economies along its path. Route 66 continues to shape the way travelers see the United States. In the last 20 years, social media has created a new wave of interest in the old highway. Photographers and bloggers from Europe, Asia, and South America share pictures of restored motels, classic cars, and long, empty stretches of road. Young people who never knew life before the internet are now curious about a slower journey where surprise and discovery happen face to face and not on a screen. This digital attention is helping small towns along the route attract visitors again and rebuild businesses. The road also inspires filmmakers and artists. Independent documentaries and music videos show its faded signs and open skies. Museums and visitor centers have sprung up to preserve artifacts from the golden years. Murals on old brick buildings celebrate its history. The image of a lone traveler on Route 66 is still powerful enough to appear in advertising and tourism campaigns all over the world. Another change is the rise of classic car clubs and motorcycle tours that specialize in Route 66 trips. Groups from Germany, Japan, and Australia fly into Chicago, rent vintage cars or motorcycles, and spend 2 or 3 weeks driving to California. They stop at diners restored to the way they looked in the 1950s. They buy handmade souvenirs from local artists. This kind of tourism directly supports communities that once lost everything when the interstate bypassed them. Environmental awareness has also entered the conversation. Some organizations work to plant trees or clean up litter along the route. Others promote electric vehicle charging stations at historic stops so that future travelers can drive the route with lower emissions. By combining preservation with sustainability, they hope to keep Route 66 alive for another century. Education plays a role too. Schools along the corridor teach students about the cultural and economic history of Route 66. Local historians collect oral histories from older residents who remember the boom times. These stories are recorded and shared online so that people everywhere can understand what life was like when thousands of cars rolled past every day. As the centennial of Route 66 approaches in 2026, there is a growing movement to celebrate not only its past but also its future. Towns are planning festivals, car shows, and art exhibits. Some are restoring neon lights that have been dark for decades. State governments are collaborating to repair stretches of pavement and improve signage for tourists. These efforts create a sense of unity across the 8 states and remind Americans that their history can be a living resource rather than a forgotten relic. The road has also become a place where different cultures meet. Native American communities along the route are building cultural centers and shops that share traditional crafts and food with travelers. Mexican-American influences appear in restaurants and markets throughout the Southwest segments. This cultural exchange gives Route 66 an even richer identity than it had in the 1950s. Modern technology makes it easier to plan a Route 66 trip, but it cannot remove the sense of mystery. GPS can tell you where to turn, but it cannot tell you what you will feel when you see the desert sunset or an abandoned gas station covered in murals. Travelers often report that the most memorable moments come from unplanned stops, conversations with locals, and finding forgotten landmarks. For people living far from the United States, Route 66 represents a kind of mythic America. They imagine wide-open highways, diners with jukeboxes, classic cars, and big skies. When they finally drive the route, they discover a more complex and human story. They see working towns struggling to survive and volunteers fighting to preserve history. They meet people who welcome them not as tourists, but as guests, continuing a tradition that began almost 100 years ago. Economic studies show that heritage tourism along Route 66 generates significant revenue each year. Small businesses that embrace the history tend to thrive. Visitors buy not only meals and rooms, but also artwork, crafts, books, and guided tours. This spending helps keep local schools, libraries, and community centers alive. The road's history becomes a tool for present and future prosperity. When thinking about why Route 66 still matters, it helps to remember that this was one of the first roads to truly unite urban industrial America with the rural Southwest and Pacific Coast. It offered a practical route, but it also offered a psychological one. It showed people they could change their lives simply by driving west. This idea of movement and reinvention still defines much of American culture today. Even though parts of the pavement are cracked or gone, the spirit of the highway remains clear. It says that travel can be personal. It says that discovery can happen anywhere. It says that history is not just in books, but under your wheels and outside your window. People who drive it today often talk about a sense of connection with everyone who came before them, from Dust Bowl migrants to rock musicians to families on summer vacation. Looking ahead, it is likely that Route 66 will keep evolving. It may become a model for other historic roads around the world. It may become a testing ground for electric vehicles and new kinds of roadside hospitality. It may also remain a place for quiet reflection, far from the high-speed interstates. Whatever happens, its identity as the Mother Road will continue to attract people who want more than just a drive from point A to point B. The story of Route 66 is therefore not only about the past, but about what travel means. It is about freedom and connection. It is about local identity in a global age. It is about the power of roads to shape culture and memory. Today, if you stand on a stretch of Route 66 and listen carefully, you might hear the echo of an old engine, the laughter of a family on vacation, the faint notes of a familiar song. You are standing on a living timeline of the 20th century. You are part of a tradition that still carries people forward 1 mile at a time.